From Barangaroo Studios, this is the COB, brought to you by eToro. Invest in ASX shares with $0 commission.
Well, hello to you on this Friday afternoon. This is the COB, all the stuff you need to know about the day in business and markets. I'm Nadine Blaney.
And I'm Danny Akuye.
So Danny, a little bit of a rally into the close.
I know, I was just having a look. It looks like the ASX 200 has finished up 1.13% and CBO 200 1.07%.
I think that's a pretty solid performance coming through on this Friday. You'll be hearing these stats a lot. We're not the only ones that are quoting them, but you know, the longest winning streak that we've had since April, the 5th session in a row that we're seeing these gains for the 4 trading days. I almost said 5, but for the 4 trading days, it looks like this little market powered ahead by nearly 2%.
Woohoo!
I'm gonna cheers with a glass of wine to that, I think.
Absolutely. Fry-yay.
Bring it in, girls. Okay, anyways, major themes. Clearly it's the China stimulus.
Yep.
You know, lots of speculation about that.
Yep.
China's PBOC does meet next week, so will it come then? But I think really important is what form that stimulus will take.
Totally.
So look, that's something we'll be exploring, you know, throughout. We also continue to talk about the newly named Magnificent Seven in the States, continuing to try. You don't like it, do you?
No, I do. It's only I tweeted about it, and one of our lovely guests sort of took me to task over the fact that Apple has a larger market cap than the smaller Russell 2000. So we had a debate about whether or not that was just clickbait.
Okay, well, I'll leave you to that one. But yeah, tech did well here today. And I just thought after such a big week in terms of central banks, so the Fed, the ECB, the BOJ, it would be worthwhile just giving a thought to next week. So I mentioned the PBOC, but we also have testimony from the Fed Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. And look, I had a chat with Ilya Spivak from Tasty Live earlier this morning, who said, look, people are going to be listening to what he's saying, because so far it appears as if, you know, the central bank's being tested, really, you know, hawkish stance.
I think it's falling, what he said is completely falling on deaf ears. You've just got to look at the market. You're seeing yields moving down. The US dollar was super weak overnight. And it looks though the markets are saying the US is going to end up not raising anymore, might even cut. I'm starting to hear people talking about cutting again. And meanwhile, Australia, Canada, Europe, UK still putting up rates. So we're all behind the curve.
Yeah, it's interesting because we had Westpac, Bill Evans, the chief economist there, putting out revised growth forecasts based on a revised terminal rate here in Australia, saying that he doesn't reckon there will be any cuts. Now, it's not till the beginning of calendar 24, excuse me. I'm just trying to remember exactly what month. I'll go to my own little Twitter feed if you don't follow me. Sometimes I put interesting things on there. Yeah, a delay to the first rate cut now in 2024 from February till May. So, you know, pretty much a year out from seeing any interest rate cuts, according to Bill Evans at Westpac here in Australia. That's that jobs data yesterday, coming home to roost.
Exactly.
Sector-wise, let's run through what performed today. In fact, here's another party fun fact for you. All 11 sectors in positive territory today. I can't even remember the last time I saw that, Danny.
I know. Even healthcare's managed to, you know, have a bit of a rally in spite of CSL. Do you know what's really interesting is Pro Medicus.
Really?
It was up 4%. I think it's edging up towards, you know, its highs, if not surpassing them. I've only got a chart going back to July last year, but that's at $68.90. So yeah. We're on energy now.
Stuck on energy, but let's go to Infotech, because Infotech, yet another sector that was performing. So not only is it just catching a bid because of what was happening on Wall Street, but we have had Citi upgrading Xero, so that was up by 3% today. So yeah, climbing close to $120. Lots of strength there, and the banks were positive today, not overwhelmingly so, but looking good.
Macquarie's been on a real tear lately, I've noticed. And look at Commonwealth Bank, it's going to be knocking through that $100 level again.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. We've got the session in Wall Street tonight and consumer confidence from the University of Michigan, but we've got the Juneteenth holiday on the 19th on Monday in the US, so markets will be closed. Retailers, always worth checking in. Consumer discretionary,
some
looking to
buying.
add.
Yeah, it looks, I mean, really across the board. I think it's so funny, Lavisa, all the brokers are downgrading it to a sell. And I feel like the market's going, we've already discounted that.
Yeah, catch up with us. Okay, and look, we can't talk without mentioning AGL. It was, real standout. You just spoke with the CFO. Any big takeaways from that, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, they seem really committed to the rollout of not only the renewables, but also this battery storage. And they were saying they're able to secure a lot of finance. There's big demand at the moment from the US for green loans effectively. So worth watching to try and, I did try and delve out and tease out some of the more subtle points about transmission lines and keeping wholesale energy prices down to really prove that renewables can be low cost. So definitely worth watching.
Yeah, it is a stock of the day. We'll get there in just a moment, but I thought we would just run through some of the other companies that have been in the news today. Look, it was quiet other than AGL for the most part, but Min Resources coming out late in the session and saying that it has, it's found a gas discovery. So yeah, you always think of Min Resources as iron ore and then lithium, but also, every once in a while you get a reminder that it's got some gas in its portfolio as well. Another company that was out with a bit of an update today, apparently DeGrey, I sort of miss this as well.
They were denying that there were rumours that they had an extra $3 billion in cash on the balance sheet, and management have come out and actually denied that. But the gold sector generally rallied today, although DeGrey was one of the top performers, up over 6%.
Yeah, it had to respond to that media speculation that did come from the West Australian newspaper. So interesting one to watch. Suncorp, ANZ, look, Queensland has got in the middle, and it says that it would have killed off the proposed buyout of Suncorp unless it agreed to some laws which are related to keeping operations in the States. So they need to have a certain number of employees in regional areas, keep the headquarters in Queensland, but it looks like they've come to an agreement. And Zero, as we mentioned, looking pretty good. Yeah,
they've put up their prices for ANZ. I noticed a report from Goldman's which has a $130 price target on that.
Okay. Zero, boy, you would have been wishing you bought it at the lows back in November.
Quite.
It was on your list, and I do remember speaking to quite a lot of people then saying you should be buying Zero. Anywho, that's why you watch AusBiz. Elkem today has confirmed a extension at its Mount Cattlin mine. So watching that share price as well. That yearly chart doesn't give it a lot of context. Let me...
I'll get it for you.
Yeah, can't... My computer's just logged me out. Anyhow, it's a Friday. I think it's given up.
Allcome, up about 4.5%.
Yeah. So good one. Look, I was listening in to the call this afternoon hosted by the one, the only Andrew Gagan, and he had Junbei Liu from Tribeca. He had Adam Dawes from Shaw Partners. And I thought Junbei Liu brought up a good point in relation to AGL, because she said, you know what, they're talking about high wholesale electricity prices, high retail electricity prices contributing to that FY24 outlook, because consumers, politicians aren't going to like hearing it. Let's hear what else she had to say.
So much uneasiness that's going on with the share register, with the power plants being shut down. They're one of the biggest polluters in Australia with their coal-fired power stations. All of these sort of flags that sort of made me go, no, I'm not going to buy it. Now at $11, I think I've missed that initial run. I think it's probably a little bit too late. But with wholesale prices going where they're going, and we know electricity prices aren't going, they're only going one way, which is higher. This will really continue to be a story. And that 2024 story looks like it's being started to price in at the moment, potentially. So I think it's a little bit too late. If you hold it, you would definitely hold on to it. I think but for me, I'd be neutral on it at this price.
I will be selling it. Look, if you hold it, look, it's probably okay for some time. It's defensive and it's earning pretty much locked in, simply because, government has given them the ability to increase price up to, over 20% for the next 12 months. So, from 1st of July. So, net, that next 12 months, they have very high confidence they will get to that earning. It's defensive. It's probably not going to move with the market falls and the like, but I don't think you should put any fresh money in it.
pretty clear call there from Jun Bei Liu from Tribeca.
Absolutely.
Josh Gilbert from eToro is standing by to wrap this week with us. Josh, hi, welcome. I said I can't remember the last time I saw all 11 sectors in positive territory, and this weekly gain, 1.8, 1.9%. It's all systems go.
Absolutely. And it's a couple of weeks since we had a weekly gain as well. So yeah, a good end to the week, that's for sure. But look, I think a bit of a positive tailwind that we're getting from obviously the US. It's just absolutely on fire at the moment. We've obviously got some optimism coming from China as well, that they're gonna start acting, and obviously we've seen some cuts come through this week, and that's giving investors a bit of hope that we're going to see further stimulus coming into the economy. I think that helped offset some of the employment data that we got yesterday, which I think if we didn't have some of that positivity coming from China, then we probably would have seen the market fall lower yesterday on the back of that, given that it sort of grew rate hike expectations again for July. But I think for the local market, a lot of the bad news I feel at this point is sort of priced in. Markets have known for a while now that low has continued to sort of stay hawkish. It has taken investors a little bit by surprise this year how aggressive the RBA has been. But I think if we look at its performance this year, well underperforming global markets. So I think some of that hawkishness is beginning to be priced in, and investors are seeing a little bit of value in this market now at these levels.
Yeah, interesting, Josh. Have some of the eToro, investors, have they participated in this big tech rally? And do you think they're going to start to say, well, everything's gone quite hard there, maybe we'll have a look at some of the markets, as you say, like Australia, which has underperformed, and maybe China?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've ultimately definitely seen people jump on that sort of tech bandwagon. And I think what's really important there is how important it is for investors to stay in markets. There's always something to worry about in financial markets, but it's that old age saying of timing in the markets rather than timing the markets rather than timing the market. And I think that's massively important, right? Nasdaq up more than 30% this year. Go back to the start of the year. Not many people were going to have tipped that to be the case where we are. Obviously, the banking crisis has obviously, accelerated, inflation falling and the expectations of rates coming down. But ultimately, yes, we are seeing investors sort of move into that. There is that sort of, thought process now of, okay, when does tech ultimately need to take a bit of a breather? Because we're getting to that stage now. Nasdaq having one of the best starts to the year in history. Valuations are going to be the front and center at the moment, but I think investors are sort of shrugging valuations off for the expectations that rapid growth is ahead for, say, some of these AI names, and I think you've got to question valuations when you've got, Nvidia at 20 times price to sales. But I think investors are starting to see those opportunities now in China, contrarian opportunities. Absolutely. We saw that at the start of the year when investors were sort of looking at Japan. The Nikkei was a really popular index, by investors. And again, they've been rewarded by that as well. Retail investors are sort of showing that they aren't the dumb money anymore, and they are smarter and more important to markets than ever.
Yeah, okay, so a bit of FOMO there as well. I mean, we sort of felt it, we knew it, didn't we? So it was a massive week for central banks, and that has contributed to the sentiment, obviously. Next week, we get Jerome Powell speaking. It's a testimony that we will be listening very closely to hear what, they've been so hawkish. He tried to sound hawkish post the press conference, but, the market action would sort of go a long way to potentially say that no one's listening. So what are we going to hear that could help set the tone?
Yeah, well, I think, Jerome Powell's singing one song and the market's hearing something completely different right now. And I think, he is trying his best, as you say, to sort of be hawkish. Some of his comments say, the dot plot expects 2 more hikes, but, that's just a forecast. So, there's little bits, I think, of dovishness within, what he said earlier this week. Again, I think, that speech is obviously going to be quite key. There's no real incentive for him to sort of not be hawkish at this case. If he comes out and, and says that the Fed is done, then obviously he's just going to sort of exuberate sort of the loosening of financial conditions, which will undo all of the work that they have obviously tried to do at this point. He's got to keep his foot on the gas ultimately, because inflation is moving in the right direction. We are seeing it cool rapidly in the US, and I think that's what investors are running with here. And I think they're sort of ignoring what Jerome Powell is saying, believing that, okay, yeah, we may have another hike that's basically priced into markets. We knew that even if the Fed did pause, which they did this week, that another hike was probably going to be on the horizon anyway. So I think markets are saying, okay, fine, we can expect another hike. We know, inflation is moving in the right direction, but that still leaves them to believe that they might see a rate cut by year end. Markets are, most of the conversation that we're hearing at the moment is no rate cuts. But markets don't believe that. Markets think that we're definitely going to see a rate cut by year end, and that's why we're getting so much optimism, obviously from tech so far this year. So yeah, I think he's going to be obviously the focus for next week, given that it is a bit of a quiet front on the economic stage anyway. But I think investors will be looking towards China again outside of the Jay Powell speech, because they've got more lending rate decisions as well, with 2 cuts this week, more expectations of cuts there, which could be great for the local market, right? Materials have really underperformed this year. So some optimism back into the materials sector could really help push the ASX higher over the next sort of couple of weeks.
Well, it's going to be exciting yet again. Hey, Josh, the good news is your weekend starts now. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday afternoon, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Let's take a look then at some of the leaders and laggards of this Friday session.
Leaders and laggards, I was expecting to say, and top of the pops. There it is. AGL up almost 10% today at $10.60. Big rally in some of those gold stocks as well, like really big rally. Look at Bellevue Gold and
huge, and lithium as well.
Yeah,
I was a bit surprised when I looked at the market map, and BHP, Rio, Fortescue have picked themselves up.
But nowhere near.
No, Pilbara is up by 3.5%.
Absolutely.
And look at Liontown Resources, up by 8%. There's no news on the Albemarle bid. I did note that it has changed officially its business address, but look, it's just there's enthusiasm toward that sector today. There's no getting around it.
And energy stocks really strong. Both the Whitehaven as well as New Hope, and also Woodside and Santos putting in some really good rallies
Santos
as well.
Is up by 4%.
Yeah, I know,
that's
they're
huge.
big moves, really big moves.
Look, some of the laggards, when I was looking a little bit earlier on, there wasn't sort of any news associated with these companies that I could see, including Star Entertainment, including Collins Foods. Johns Lyng, it wins a lot of those contracts to rebuild in the wake of events, weather events and such. No news that I can see associated with it, down by 2.5%. And Nanosonics, it looks like today there was a change in director's interest notice filed, but again, I don't have the details on that. And you look further and further down, the only one that we can say that we know why it continues to underperform this week is CSL. That was one of the big corporate stories of the week, I do think, just this downgrade coming through and just the pile-on.
Absolutely. It, I think people now are a little bit cautious on this one. It looks though it's sort of stabilised today around that $277 level, but and it's definitely down to the lows, below the lows that we've seen earlier on in the year. I think because companies like CSL never have downgrades, I think sort of people are saying, I've got a lot of it. Let's just wait and see what I'll do with this one.
Quick look at some of these small cap leaders and laggards. Jervon Global up by 30% on news. So the Department of Defense, the DOD in the US, is allowing it to do some exploratory work when it comes to not just cobalt, not just the digging for it, but also the potential, or examining the potential for a cobalt refinery in the US. It's really looking to secure local, and I think it operates in Idaho, local supply of some of these critical minerals. So that's the story there. Maybe just flipping over to the laggards, see if we can pick anything out. DGL
I think there was an interview this afternoon.
Yeah,
was
on
there
the small
not?
caps.
Yeah.
DGL downgraded. Andrew Gagan spoke with the CEO off by a further 12% today, because this was actually a yesterday story. Yesterday's story as well. Australian Ethical did so well, so giving back some of those gains.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a little snapshot of what happened stock specifically on this Friday. We're looking forward to Monday.
Monday. Well, Monday, it is a holiday in the US, but what do we have? The former Deputy Governor of the DOJ is joining us at 11:10.
It is going to be good, so we'll get some insight into what goes on in the room.
Yeah. Tabe.
I think so. He said, "Call me Massa." I do know
I
that.
love that.
Yeah, me too. Thank goodness. I think that'll be Kyle that will be doing that interview. Kyle Rudder, who was not in the office today. We missed you, Kyle, if you're watching. Look, other than that, next week, I think we sort of covered it. It's a little bit quieter on the economic front in the United States, but we do get China. China will be a watching brief. We do get Jay Powell and his testimony, and
I'm just trying to pull up a
me
calendar
too.
so we have a look and see what's actually going on. Oh la
Yep.
la.
So we've got here locally, I'm trying to see, we've got
Minutes of the RBA.
from the meeting. We've got
US housing starts on
Yeah.
Tuesday. We've got CPI and PPI for the UK on Wednesday. And the Bank of England have a policy meeting on Thursday. US existing home sales in May. And then going to Friday, global flash PMIs for June are meant to be coming out, as well as UK retail sales for
I think
May.
Monday's going to be a quiet one. I can't
Very
see anything.
quiet, absolutely. Unless China does something over the weekend.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's always true. They have form in
Yeah,
that regard.
they do.
Yeah.
And also too, it's interesting, Xi Jinping is meeting with Bill Gates today.
Oh,
Yes, I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's over there. And Blinken's going as well. So, yeah, we'll
okay.
wait and see.
Geopolitics, we'll put in those calls now for next week. All right, so the final figures are in. 7,251 for the S&P ASX 200, which is a gain of more than 1%. So really good. Week to date, up 1.8%.
Woohoo.
Thank AI stocks. Thank tech rally in the United States. I guess thank those central bankers as well for pausing. Look, if you've missed anything this week, we do hope that you go online and catch up with many of the interviews that we've done throughout. Sign up for our weekend newsletter. It's always an easy way to get across some of the interviews that we've enjoyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I hope you have a great weekend, happy, healthy, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday.
Okay, bye.
The COB is brought to you by eToro. Invest in ASX shares with $0 commission.